At 8:47 on the morning of December 19, 1944, Sergeant William Thompson stood in the commander's hatch of his M4A3 Sherman tank, watching German infantry advance through the snow-covered Belgian forest 800 yards away. The tank's designation was 4 Charlie 7. The crew had named it Old Reliable. In 72 hours, it would earn a different name, the Ghost. Thompson was 23 years old, a farm kid from Nebraska. He had joined the 7th Armored Division in September 1944, 3 months after D-Day. 0 confirmed tank kills. 0 confirmed anything. He had spent most of the war in a maintenance depot in England, fixing other men's tanks. Now he commanded one. And he was terrified. The Battle of the Bulge had started 3 days earlier. Hitler's last major offensive in the West. Over 200,000 German troops, 1,400 tanks and assault guns, all concentrated in a 50-mile front through the Ardennes forest. The goal was simple: split the Allied line, capture Antwerp, win the war. The mathematics were brutal. American forces in the region were outnumbered 3-1. Thompson's tank was part of a blocking force near the town of St. Vith. 14 Shermans, 63 men. Orders were to hold the crossroads at all costs. German reconnaissance had identified the position 2 hours earlier. Now the main assault was coming. The first German shell hit the frozen ground 40 yards short of Thompson's position. The impact threw frozen mud 20 feet into the air. The second shell hit the Sherman to Thompson's left. The turret exploded. Ammunition cooked off inside the hull. Thompson watched 4 men burn. He dropped into the turret and slammed the hatch. The interior smelled like diesel fuel and fear. Corporal James Martinez sat in the gunner's seat, hands on the traverse controls. Private Robert Chen loaded the breech with a 75mm armor-piercing round. Private First Class David Wilson crouched in the bow gunner's position, watching through the periscope. Driver Private Eddie Jackson had both hands on the control levers. Thompson keyed the radio. All Charlie units, this is Charlie 7. Enemy armor advancing from grid 2905. Count 12. Correction, 14 Panthers. Request permission to engage. The response was immediate. Charlie 7, this is Charlie 6. Permission granted. Give them hell. The Sherman 75mm gun had an effective range of 1,000 yards against medium armor. The Panther 75mm K-Butyl K42L70 could penetrate a Sherman's frontal armor at 2,000 yards. The math wasn't good. Martinez tracked the lead Panther through his sight. Range 900 yards. Closing. He waited. 850 yards. Still closing. At 800 yards, he fired. The Sherman rocked. The shell flew true. It struck the Panther's Gleises plate and ricocheted into the sky. The German tank didn't even slow down. Loader AP. Gunner, traverse right. Lead vehicle. Thompson's voice was steady. Years later, Martinez would remember thinking how calm the sergeant sounded, how wrong that calm was. The battle lasted 23 minutes. At the end, 7 Shermans were burning. The Germans had lost 3 Panthers and an estimated 40 infantry. They had also achieved their objective. The crossroads was compromised. The American line was broken. Thompson received the order to withdraw at Zone 9116. He acknowledged. Then his tank took a direct hit. The shell struck the right side of the turret. The impact knocked Martinez unconscious. Chen was killed instantly. Wilson and Jackson were wounded but alive. Thompson was bleeding from his ears. The tank's radio was destroyed. The intercom was destroyed. The turret traverse was jammed, but the engine still ran, and the 75mm gun still fired. Thompson made a decision. He would cover the withdrawal, alone if necessary. He pulled Martinez out of the gunner's seat and took his place. The German infantry was 200 yards away now. He could see them moving between the trees. He fired, loaded, fired again. The manual loading process took 12 seconds, 3 times longer than with a loader. He fired 17 rounds in 4 minutes. The German advance stopped. At 0924, Thompson climbed out of the turret to check on his crew. Wilson and Jackson were unconscious. Martinez was breathing but unresponsive. Chen was beyond help. The tank had taken 3 more hits. The right track was damaged. The turret was stuck facing northeast. The hydraulic fluid was leaking. But the guns still worked. Thompson made his second decision. He would abandon the tank. But first, he would make sure it kept fighting. The M4 Sherman's 75mm gun had a simple trigger mechanism, a solenoid-operated firing pin activated by an electrical switch in the gunner's controls. Thompson had spent 3 months in a maintenance depot. He knew how the system worked. He knew how to bypass it. He used his combat knife to strip insulation from 2 wires. He twisted them together. He wedged a piece of shrapnel into the trigger mechanism, creating a short circuit. Then he loaded the gun with a high-explosive shell and pointed it down the road where the German infantry was regrouping. The temperature was 18 degrees Fahrenheit. The electrical system was running on emergency power from the auxiliary battery. Thompson calculated he had maybe 4 hours before the battery died, maybe less. He rigged a simple system. Every time the recoil mechanism returned to battery after firing, it would complete the electrical circuit. The gun would fire. The recoil would break the circuit. The mechanism would return to battery. The circuit would complete again. The gun would fire, over and over, a mechanical loop. The only problem was ammunition. The Sherman carried 90 rounds. Thompson had fired 17. That left 73. He loaded 6 shells into the ready rack. That meant the gun could fire 6 times before someone needed to manually reload it. Thompson dragged his wounded crew 200 yards into the forest. He came back. He loaded 6 more shells. He activated his trap. Then he ran. The first shot fired at 0941. The high-explosive shell detonated in the middle of a German infantry squad. 12 men died instantly. The Germans thought the tank was still manned. They returned fire. Over 300 rounds struck the Sherman's hull in the next 2 minutes. The tank didn't care. It fired again. Second shot, 0943. Another German squad obliterated. The Wehrmacht company commander called for artillery support. At 0948, 3 105mm howitzer shells landed within 50 yards of the tank. The Sherman fired again, third shot. The German advance stopped completely. By 10:15, the German forces had committed 2 full companies to destroying a single Sherman tank they believed was crewed by suicidal Americans. They had no idea the tank was empty. Thompson and his surviving crew reached American lines at 11:27. He reported his tank destroyed and his position overrun. His commanding officer marked Charlie 7 as a combat loss. The war moved on, but the tank didn't stop fighting. On December 20th, at 0623, a German patrol approaching the abandoned Sherman triggered the gun again. Fourth shot, 3 Germans killed. The patrol withdrew. At 11:42, German combat engineers approached the tank to plant demolition charges. Fifth shot, the engineers scattered. 1 didn't make it. The temperature dropped to 12 degrees that night. The battery should have died. The electrical system should have frozen. The gun should have stopped. It didn't. December 21st, 0734. A German recovery team with a half-track and a Panther escort tried to tow the Sherman away. Sixth shot, the half-track's front tire exploded. The crew abandoned the vehicle. The Panther put 14 rounds into the Sherman from 300 yards. Every shell hit. The armor was compromised in 7 places. Fuel was leaking. The right side was on fire. The gun kept firing. The Germans began to fear the tank. Stories spread through the Wehrmacht lines. The ghost tank. The devil's machine. The American weapon that refused to die. Some said it was crewed by the damned. Others said it was cursed. No one said it was empty. By December 22nd, the German forces had routed around the position entirely. They wouldn't approach within 400 yards of the burning Sherman. Command had designated it a no-go zone. Orders were to bypass, not engage. The 7th Armored Division's tactical maps showed the area as German-controlled, but 400 square yards around that crossroads belonged to a ghost. The battery finally died at 13:47 on December 22nd. The gun fired its last shot at a German ammunition truck 600 yards away. The truck exploded. The fireball was visible from American positions 2 miles away. Then silence. 3 days. 72 hours. The abandoned Sherman had fired 47 times. German casualty estimates range from 40 to 60 killed or wounded. The psychological impact was incalculable. An entire Wehrmacht battalion had wasted 3 days trying to destroy a tank with no crew. American forces retook the crossroads on December 28th. Engineers examined the Sherman. The damage report listed 31 penetrating hits, catastrophic fire damage, destroyed turret traverse, missing right track, and a completely burned-out interior. the gun was still pointed down the road. The makeshift trigger mechanism was melted but still recognizable. The battalion commander, who had ordered Thompson to withdraw, read the engineering report twice, then recommended Sergeant William Thompson for the Silver Star. Thompson tried to refuse it. The tank did all the work. He told his commanding officer, "Son, you turned a destroyed tank into a weapon that terrified an entire German battalion for 3 days. That's war-winning innovation." On the morning of December 23rd, Thompson borrowed binoculars and climbed to a ridge 2 miles from the crossroads. He could see smoke rising from his tank. He could see German troops maintaining their distance. He could see his Sherman, alone in the snow, still holding ground it had been ordered to defend. He watched for 20 minutes, then he turned away. The M4A3 Sherman, designated for Charlie 7, was never recovered. German forces abandoned it when they withdrew. American forces marked it as unsalvageable. It sat at that crossroads for 6 months. In June 1945, Belgian civilians stripped it for scrap metal. The gun was cut apart, the armor was melted down, the engine was salvaged for parts, but the turret remained. A Belgian farmer named Henri Dubois dragged it to his property with a borrowed tractor. He welded it into his barn wall as a memorial. It's still there, 79 years later. Painted white, filled with hay, a ghost that became a monument. Thompson survived the war. He returned to Nebraska in November 1945. He married Sarah Mitchell in December. They had 4 children. He worked as a mechanic for 40 years. He never owned a gun after the war. He died on August 3, 1998 at 77. His grandson delivered the eulogy, mentioning the Silver Star, the farm, the family. He didn't mention the tank. Thompson had never told them. The German 18th Volksgrenadier Division faced the ghost tank. After the war, veterans called it the Devil's Machine, and proof that American engineering was touched by God or madness. The 7th Armored Division's official records show M4A3 Sherman serial number 3056823 as destroyed on December 19, 1944 near St. Vith, Belgium. Crew casualties: 1 killed, 3 wounded. Tank designated total loss. There is no mention of the 3 days that followed. No mention of the 47 rounds fired after the crew abandoned it. No mention of the psychological warfare it waged on an entire German battalion. But the veterans remember. The few who are left, they remember the stories their fathers told about the winter of 1944, about the desperate fighting in the Ardennes, about the tanks that wouldn't die and the men who refused to quit, about a sergeant from Nebraska who turned defeat into a legend with a knife, 2 wires, and a piece of shrapnel. Henri Dubois died in 2003 at the age of 87. His son, Michel, inherited the farm. The turret is still in the barn wall. Michel has been offered money for it. Museums have asked to purchase it. He always refuses. My father said it defended our land when no one else could. Michel explained in 2019, "It stays here. It belongs here." On December 19th, every year, a small group of Belgian and American veterans, the number shrinks every year, gather at the crossroads where 4 Charlie 7 made its stand. They place a wreath. They observe a minute of silence. They remember Sergeant William Thompson and his crew. They remember the Sherman that wouldn't stop fighting. The mathematics of the Battle of the Bulge are well documented, over 1 million men engaged. 840,000 Americans, 610,000 Germans. American casualties, 19,000 killed, 47,500 wounded. German casualties, 67,000 killed or missing, 100,000 captured. The battle lasted 41 days. It was the bloodiest battle fought by American forces in World War II. But the mathematics don't capture everything. They don't capture the story of one abandoned tank holding 400 square yards of Belgian forest for 3 days. They don't capture the ingenuity of a 23-year-old sergeant who turned mechanical knowledge into a psychological weapon. They don't capture the fear that spread through German lines when they realized they were fighting something that couldn't be killed because it was already dead. The Sherman tank was never meant to be a great weapon. It was meant to be good enough, cheap enough to mass produce, simple enough for drafted farm boys to operate, reliable enough to cross an ocean and fight a continent away from home. It wasn't the best tank in the war. The German Panthers and Tigers had better armor, better guns, better optics, but the Sherman had something else. It had the capacity to surprise. Thompson understood this. Years later, in a rare interview with a local Nebraska newspaper, he tried to explain. "The Germans built tanks to win battles," he said. "We built tanks to win the war. There's a difference. A Panther could destroy 3 Shermans in a straight fight, but we had 10 Shermans for every Panther they had. And when you destroy one of our tanks, another one appears, and another, and another. We just kept coming. That's what scared them. Not our tanks, our determination." But that December morning in 1944, determination seemed insufficient. The German advance was overwhelming. The American line was collapsing. Tanks were burning across the entire front. Thompson watched his tank commander get killed. He took command of a crew he barely knew. He rigged a weapon system that by all rights should have failed. And then he walked away from it, not knowing if it would fire once or 100 times. The cold saved the tank. The freezing temperatures preserved the electrical system. Moisture froze solid instead of causing shorts. The circuits stayed intact. The 18-degree weather that killed men kept the machine alive. Marie Beaumont, 16 in December 1944, lived 600 yards from the crossroads. "We heard the American tank every few hours. Boom. The Germans would shoot back, then silence, then boom again. My father said the Americans must have very brave men in that tank. We didn't know it was empty until after the war." By the 3rd day, German soldiers refused orders to approach the tank. The mythology had grown too powerful. It couldn't be destroyed because it was already destroyed. It couldn't be killed because it had no crew to kill. Thompson's crew survived. Martinez recovered. Wilson lost 3 fingers but returned to duty. Jackson was sent home with a Purple Heart. Chen was buried in Belgium. Thompson attended the funeral in 1946, placing a photograph of 4 Charlie 7 on the grave. The tank itself ceased to exist in 1945, but pieces survived. The turret in Henri Dubois' barn, the serial number plate in a collection, and the story that refused to be scrapped. The ghost tank proved that determination could outlast engineering, that ingenuity could multiply force, that a single desperate idea could hold ground against an army. The 7th Armored Division fought to the end. Thompson commanded 4 more Shermans after 4 Charlie 7. He survived. He went home. The crossroads held long enough for reinforcements to establish a new line. The delay contributed to German failure at St. Vith. The failure at St. Vith contributed to the collapse of the Bulge offensive, shortening the war by weeks, possibly months. 1 tank, 3 days, 47 rounds, and an idea from a 23-year-old farm kid. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and let your weapon fight for you. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Sergeant William Thompson and the crew of 4 Charlie 7 do not disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.